Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to talk. So Atomo is an Australian headquartered and listed innovator in diagnostics, and we're the global leader in the commercialization and development and supply of integrated rapid test devices for point of care testing. And we essentially obsolete existing bits in box chemistry set formats that have been used for the last 20 years. If you move on to slides, we will talk about the product today, our performance in the market over the last year, the deliverables we've made, as well as our focus for FY22. But our technology is truly unique. We're the first company in the world to develop and commercialize an integrated consumer-friendly rapid test device. It's getting increasing traction in Europe, the US, with our first FDA approval earlier this year, and now most recently with the very sizable outbreak of COVID in Australia. We're seeing a substantive step change in government policy around rapid testing and very significant growth off the back of that. Outside of COVID, we are one of the leaders in global health HIV testing, one of only 4 products that's been approved by the World Health Organization, and a key supplier into global health tenders. Outside of COVID and HIV, we supply our devices increasingly to leading diagnostic companies around the world, and we have a very extensive pipeline of OEM engagement that we're looking to execute and convert to commercial agreements in the next 15 to 24 months. Our revenue growth for the year was 25%. Really, we were expecting more in terms of growth. I think that reflects the fact that 2 of our very large deliverables came in the very last quarter, one of them 3 days before the end of FY21. So we are already seeing a significant growth as we move into FY22, and we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is really what we delivered since we listed on the ASX back in April of last year. These were the deliverables that we set for ourselves in our FY20 guidelines. We've secured an agreement with a partner in the US, and that's now converted to an FDA-approved product. And that's really fundamental for us because that's not only opened up the revenue from that contract, but it has allowed us to show the market in the US that we have our platform now FDA approved, and that's unlocked a number of very positive engagements with leading diagnostic companies eager to access our product for the US market now that FDA approval is in place. We've been one of a number of companies able to secure ARTG listing for our rapid antigen tests here in Australia, both for antibody and antigen use, and we're seeing very significant growth in that part of the business now with the outbreak in Australia. We're continuing to supply product into the US market, and we're seeing a very significant level of demand now from US companies keen to move into point of care testing, which is the single largest growing segment of the diagnostic market in the US market. We came to market initially with the world's best HIV self-test. That's launched in Australia. We're the only company that's got a test approved for infectious disease self-testing, and that's our HIV self-test in Australia. And that not only validates our platform locally, but it gives us a very good position to be one of the leaders in the COVID self-test market, which is not yet here. The TGA have not as yet approved self-testing for COVID antigen, but the politicians are continuing to discuss that as an option. We're seeing that as an inevitable outcome of the management of the pandemic, and we're very well placed with our product and our track record in self-testing to be a leader in that. Our operations have been a focus over the last year. We've more than quadrupled our capacity in the last 12 months. We're now able to produce about 20 million devices annually, which is a significant step up in our supply capabilities. And that's really to support this pivot into the US market. We're now setting up a US entity and bringing on dedicated US resources to grow our opportunities there. We're known around the world for having the world's best blood test devices. We're starting to now expand our technology and our portfolio beyond blood. We're actively working on commercializing a saliva-based test that will also, we hope, be compatible for swab-based testing. And that opens up applications of growth in respiratory conditions as well as other saliva-based home tests. Our devices are well recognized now for being best in class globally, and we're bringing out now later this year a digital solution that interfaces the home user with a healthcare professional, supports telehealth, which is the largest growing segment in the US market, and we think will also be a longer term opportunity for markets like Australia. Next slide, please. So this is really our technology. Before we came along, rapid testing for blood was a year 12 chemistry set experiment with a cassette similar to a pregnancy test, but for blood you had a lancet, a pipette, some developer solutions, and it was a bit of a rigmarole to try and do a test, and error rates were very, very high, and that really retarded self-test growth, primarily through objections from regulators, as well as also some quite poor user acceptability. Atomo's transformed that. We've really consumerized rapid testing by integrating all of that functionality down into a number of single-use devices. Steps of use have been reduced, error rates have been cut out, and now it's really become a foolproof process for self-test users to test themselves. And that's a platform that we can put any number of different assays on there. We've commercialized HIV initially. We pivoted into COVID very quickly, and we now have a COVID test. We've supplied nearly 2 million devices to France. We have a contract for 2 million devices in the US, and we're now starting to see very significant growth here in Australia. But outside of COVID and HIV, we've worked with other customers for a broad range of applications, antimicrobial screening, malaria, blood-based ultrasensitive pregnancy testing for IVF. Really, those applications have only scratched the surface of this opportunity. We expect to obsolete bits and box tests and have an Atomo solution really becoming identified as the sort of gold standard for point of care testing. Next slide, please. So we're very proud of the products that we develop. They're products that have a very positive impact in the community. Our HIV self-test is one of the leading tests in global health markets, and the Global Health Investment Fund, one of our leading investors, has modeled that at scale that technology will save tens of thousands of lives annually across the world. We also have been one of the leading providers of testing into the aged care sector here in Australia, and we feel that it's very important to deliver products that matter, and we're very proud of those. It's also allowed us to secure some very significant investor funding. Our shareholder base is diverse, but very credible. We have the Canadian federal government as a shareholder, the Global Health Investment Fund, which was set up by JP Morgan and the Gates Foundation, as well as a number of leading institutions here in the small cap space. So we have a very good institutional register and some backers with deep pockets that are here to support us as we grow. Next slide, please. In terms of performance, we had revenue growth of 25%, cash receipts of just over $8 million. You'll see from the slide down in the bottom left that we've really only come to market with commercial sales in the last year or two. We've gone from pilot evaluations and prototype testing to really a commercial scale up. We're seeing our revenue step up through FY20 and 21. We're expecting to see another very sizable step up as we move into FY22 and beyond. And that really reflects the fact that the pillars for the growth of this business are now well established. We have the regulatory approvals that we need across the globe. We have tier one blue chip partners distributing our products. We have quadrupled our capacity. We're continuing to invest in new non-blood applications to expand the range of point of care tests that we can deliver. And I think now all the fundamentals of the business are well set up, and it's very de-risked in terms of investors now looking to come on to the stock potentially as we move forward. Next slide, thank you. So in terms of the drivers of our business growth, COVID obviously has been one of the major drivers of revenue. Most recently, beyond the end of FY21 into 22, we're now selling essentially in Australia more antigen tests each month now than we were for the whole of last year, and we're only seeing that demand increase. I believe that we're going to see a very significant scale up of rapid testing across Australia. Other states will be playing catch up with New South Wales. The genie is not going back in the bottle with regard to Delta. We're seeing politicians now talking about wide scale screening programs, discussing self-testing, and obviously we're very well positioned to be a market leader there. We're bringing in as much product now from overseas as we can. It really is a case of trying to meet demand. How long it lasts, difficult to predict, but if we look to countries like Israel and the UK and the US, where they are at vaccinated levels well above Australia, they're still doing significant amounts of rapid testing. We've heard recently that the UK is doing 1 million antigen self-tests a week, and that's primarily distributed through government. So we see very substantive and long-term business from COVID. Outside of that, HIV is one of our core product offerings. We are one of only 4 products that's ever secured World Health pre-qualification. We were one of only 2 that was approved by Unitaid for a global tender back in Q4. and that's through our partnership with Viatris, who used to be called Mylan. They're a multi-billion-dollar drug pharmaceutical company. They sell the most HIV drug treatments by volume globally, and they are our exclusive partner in more than 100 countries for HIV self-testing. So with that World Health pre-qualification and Viatris as our exclusive channel partner, we're very bullish about the opportunities in HIV. The growth is not exponential in the way it might be in Australia here with COVID, but it is a very robust and growing opportunity. Currently, it's about 10 million tests per annum in self-testing markets in global health. That's expected to grow to 25 to 30 million tests by 2025. And that's a significant level of growth, and only 2 or 3 companies really in a position to compete in that market because of the requirements around pre-qualification. So we're very excited about that, and that really drives a lot of volume through the business and gives us scale. Outside of those 2 infectious diseases, we are continuing to scale up OEM engagements. We have a number of partners in Europe and the US. We're starting to see inbound inquiries now from much bigger companies interested in accessing our platform. And we think that reflects a couple of things. Firstly, our devices now have an FDA approval, having won that large global tender, and also reflecting the fact that the US landscape now for testing is completely transformed post-pandemic. We have very significant growth of home health and telehealth, which suits our products because they're designed for use in the home. And we're now seeing the large listed multinationals looking at how they can access that growing home market in the US. And we think our technology and our business is ideally placed to give them a footprint to do that. Next slide, please. And this really talks to kind of the changing landscape. I don't think the Australian investor community has fully grasped the change to testing in Europe and in the US because of our inability to travel. But when we talk to people over there, everyone's done a self-test for antigen testing. Everyone's ordering tests in the home. Now, 6% of people do their medical consults from home. That accounts for tens of millions of clinical visits each year in the US. And that channel really needs usable home-based products that were designed for consumer self-test use. And that's where Atomo's established itself as a clear global leader in blood testing, and now looking to expand that to saliva and swab. So we see enormous growth in the US market, and that's why we're looking to pivot into the US. That's where most of our customer base is. That's where most of our OEM engagement opportunities are coming from. And that's where the OTC and home test market really will transform healthcare. And we think with our technology in the hands of the right partner to help it scale, it can be disruptive and become the gold standard. Next slide, please. And then what that means for FY22, it gives us a number of clear priorities. We're going to continue to expand on those commercial partnerships. We're very confident we can complete agreements with 1 or more very large listed US partners that want to take our technology and scale it across their business in this FY. And that would see a step change in our market reach. And we think that's now much more feasible than it was pre-pandemic, because Atomo's come on with volume and with capabilities and with approvals, but also because that home test market in the US is now significantly more attractive and more visible to those larger players than it was pre-pandemic. We're continuing in the short term to maximize revenues in Australia with COVID, and also to continue to support our partner Viatris as they scale up across more than 100 countries for HIV. And that drives long-term and medium growth through the business for our existing products. We're looking to continue to now re-engage with the OEM market. We've had a lot of inbound inquiries in recent months. Some of our OEM pipeline went cold during the pandemic as all of the diagnostic companies really pivoted into COVID. But now, particularly in the US, they're coming out the other side. They're starting to look at new products. They're starting to try and fulfill a lot of capacity in the system that's no longer being utilized for COVID. And that's where we step in with a proven technology that gives them access to home test markets. It gives them access to a very well-established and transformative level of user satisfaction that the kits just don't deliver. And I think that makes our offering quite compelling. And I'm cognizant of the fact that we're the only company in the world that has been able to integrate and commercialize this kit technology in a single consumer-friendly device. And that's a very exciting place for us to be. I've mentioned our efforts outside of blood. We're quite well advanced and have got new IP down on a saliva-based platform we're very excited about, and we hope to be able to announce to market some commercial opportunities around that later in the year. And then to support all of that, we are well capitalized, our balance sheet's strong. We've got $17 million on hand. We've got no debt. We paid that out at the IPO. So we're able to fund these development activities in the US. We don't expect to have to come back to market to raise more capital to get to break even. So we're sustainable, we believe, from that perspective, and very excited now about the opportunities that the US market holds for us over the coming years. And
thanks,
that's
John.
a quick update.
Thank you. We have lots of questions that we don't have a lot of time for, unfortunately.
Sure.
But one bigger picture question here is that you're in a sweet spot here with this COVID testing kit. You've got impressive revenue of up 25%, but the share price is lower this year. What's the disconnect here?
Well, it's a good question. I think part of the disconnect is possibly that the transformative nature of home testing has not hit Australia. Australia is very much lab centric. The pathology groups have enormous control over reimbursement in Australia. So we have a situation where 95% plus of COVID testing is still being done by PCR in the lab. In the US, that's probably more like 50-50. In the UK, rapid testing accounts for more than PCR. So I think there's a step change in the delivery of point of care testing that the Australian economy hasn't undergone, and therefore the investors, I think, don't appreciate the disruptive nature of point of care testing and how the pandemic has completely transformed the landscape. I think also some of our deliverables for FY21 came too late in the year to impact our revenues, and we'll see them in this FY. So our approval with FDA came on the 26th of June. Our ability to supply into that contract, obviously, for FY21 was gone. The HIV global tender we won in April, we supplied the first small quantity at the end of the year. Again, those orders are going to come through in this FY. So I think as we continue to roll out our quarterlies and show more traction, we believe the share price will take care of itself. But we've always said this is a 3 to 5 year long-term growth story. We're not really focused on day-to-day fluctuations.